Welcome to Truth Talk Live.
All right, let's talk.
The truth is, I can't hide it. I can't hold it no more.
A daily program powered by the Truth Network.
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
Where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak
Your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
Oh, wow. If we had a day today at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, we are here live today with Truth Talk Live, interestingly in Dallas, Texas, of all places. And I am sitting here with one of the big names of the Truth Network, from my perspective, Dr. Abadan Shah, who is with Clearview Today, the show that I hope many of you have come to just fall in love with. But Dr. Shah, we had a rare treat today at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. Clearly, we've been sitting here on the convention floor with lots of amazing, godly people. But this morning, we went to the Salem breakfast where, for those familiar with Charles Swindoll, he is now 90.
That's right. That's right.
And they honored him and interviewed him. Just from your perspective, Dr. Shah, there were so many takeaways from me, but I'm just curious, what grabbed you about that time with Chuck Swindoll?
Well, to me, I listen to his voice once a week, every week. So Thursday is my Chuck Swindoll day. So as I'm getting ready, I have Insight for Living on my podcast, and I'm listening to him. But it goes way back to the early 80s when Dad used to get his tapes. And I remember listening to this man's voice, and it was very soothing at the same time, very biblical. And I remember Dad, and I see those set of tapes on his desk, and they were Chuck Swindoll or Charles Swindoll. And so I've been following his ministry for a long time, and boy, this morning it was so touching. Not only is he a great expositor, but just that heart came through. And to me, not only were people listening, but I don't know if you noticed that, Bobby, when the waiters and the waitresses, they stopped and they started looking at the screen. That touched me because that's Chuck Swindoll.
Right, here's a 90-year-old man, right?
Right.
And from what I understand, he's got glaucoma pretty bad. He can barely see. But, oh, my goodness, it was I was sitting next to Dr. Dathan Carson at the breakfast this morning, and he said, we are in the presence of greatness.
Yes.
And, God was there, clearly.
Oh, man.
But
yes.
It was amazing to see this servant of God and how the stories that were told. And one of the neatest things for him was they asked him, what was some of the significant parts of his ministry, the significant parts of his life. And it was clear, and I know you feel this way, Dr. Shaw, I know
yes.
I do, that being a pastor.
Right. That touched me. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
He felt like he was a shepherd, and he went to the end of the 78th Psalm. He quoted the entire thing.
That's right.
It was just.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so evident. And the humility with which he was speaking. At 90 years of age, people say, I can say whatever I want to now. But being in that hall and listening to him talk about his life and then challenging us to love our family. He said, don't forget your family. Love your mates. Love your husband, love your wife.
That was his last. He said, if you were just to have one word for this group out, he said, yeah.
Spend time with family.
It's your family, right?
Wow.
It was absolutely beautiful. But for those that are listening to the Truth Network for a long time, you will enjoy this story that he is going to share. So somebody asked him if there were some of his, because, he has a great sense of humor.
Yes, he does.
And
the laughter.
Said, right, the laughter that goes throughout it. And they said, well, has any of your humor ever backfired on you? And those of us who like humor have had that happen, I'm sure, many times for you, certainly for me.
Yes.
And he talked about one time that he was at a luncheon or a dinner or something with Stu Epperson, big Stu Epperson,
right.
Stu's father, and Ed Asner, with the Truth Network, but somehow or another he'd gotten Stu's name as Stan, and all through the lunch he kept on saying it's Stan and Stan, and all his handlers were trying to get him to, do you want to pray, Stu, to make sure that So the whole thing. So at the end, they give him this beautiful Stu Epperson Award for Christian
Right.
Excellence, or whatever it is, Salem, amazing award. This big, and it's.
He said, "Oh
he
yeah,
said,
Stan."
Let's change this to Stan, right? and so it was.
90 years old, not only humility, but he is sharp as a tack. I mean, he was remembering things and talking as if, man, those are goals, As I sat there, I said, that's where I want to be. If God allows me to live that long, I want to be like Chuck Swindoll.
Yeah, don't we?
Yeah.
And he was talking about God had recently, 90 years old. How cool is that? I hope that gives you as much hope as it gives me. When you're 90, God will still be putting things on your heart. He put on his heart at 90? He needs to start mentoring his grandkids.
Wow. And there was not a dry eye around in that room. I mean, people were just daubing their eyes with their napkins because it was so touching. It was so real. And it was a man full of God. That's what I saw.
And he talked about, I think it might even been Thursdays, that morning he sits with his two grandsons who are in their 30s,
Yeah.
and they share, but he said, it isn't me lecturing them.
Right.
No, we share life, and it was deep.
That's right.
Wasn't that cool?
And many times he said, I just kind of look back and forth as I'm listening to them. And he said, and one of the things he said, I thought that was great. He said, what would you do less of? He said, talk less. I was like, Chuck Swindoll, talk less. He said, because you learn more when you don't talk. I said, wow. Lesson learned. Note it down.
Yeah, I wrote down several notes. And so, I just like for the listeners to have a sense of what it's like to see lives well lived.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And people that are serving the Lord,
yeah,
like with all they've got, as long as they got it.
That's right. And I went back afterwards, and I was kind of hesitant. He's 90 years old. People are helping him walk, and so I said, am I going to try to get a picture with him? So I kind of got up to him, and I said, Pastor Chuck, thank you for your ministry. He said, yes, you're very welcome. It's like, wow, he didn't have to talk like that. He would be like, okay. He just was so generous, so kind.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That, I've noticed that about great people of God. They have grace.
Yeah.
And so when you're in their presence, you're their favorite.
That's right.
Right there, you feel it. It's an amazing thing. And so again, we're here with Dr. Shaw, Clearview today. We're going to hear more about his ministry when we come back. And we got Persecution Project on at the bottom of the hour. So I'm so glad that you tuned in today on Truth Talk Live. We got some more, much more coming your way. Stay tuned.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today, how fun. We are live from the NRB, so no need to call in because we got a lot of stuff going on. We're so blessed to have with us Dr. Abadan Shah, who you may know from Clearview Today, the radio program. It comes on every day nowadays, right?
That's right, 5 days a week.
And the time slot is
different times in different markets, but we're on the Truth Network, and God has really grown the show, and we're so grateful. We're so excited.
Yeah, we are. We are to have you, and it's so cool. You're here with us all week in the booth, right down the way, and you're sharing the booth with Dr. Date the Word Carson.
Yes.
I've seen him around here somewhere. He might be around. Oh, there you are. I guess we better turn on your mic.
Uh-oh, that's true.
But anyway, you were there with Chuck Swindoll this morning.
Oh, this morning was a mountaintop experience. We heard from one of the great ones. Great because he is a servant of the Lord. And that's how you become great. You serve.
Yeah, even when you're 90. And so, getting back to your ministry, Dr. Shaw.
Yes, sir.
It's so cool, right? You talked about your father had the tapes. But we all stand on the shoulders of our grandfathers, right?
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
I tell our listeners a little bit more. You may not get to share in your show very often of how his faith affected yours.
Well, Dad grew up in a Muslim family, and at a very young age, he saw his grandfather praying. Of course, he is praying to Allah. And at the end of that prayer, which he would do 5 times a day, very pious, my father went to him and said, Grandpa, God's going to have a special place for you in heaven. You're so pious. You've done so many things, all the 5 pillars of Islam and everything. And his grandfather began to weep. Tears came down his face. And stroking his beard, he said, Son, there is no guarantee that I will be in heaven. In Islam, there is no assurance of salvation. Well, there is no salvation. There is no assurance. And just that little encounter planted a seed in his heart that something is not right. And then through a series of miraculous things that happened where God got his attention, he read the Bible, and he came to know the Lord. And long story short, his family disowned him, kicked him out. He came from a wealthy family, and he was on the streets for several years until a missionary took him in and sent him to seminary. He didn't even know what a seminary was. And then he pastored his first and only church for almost 60 years until he passed away.
Wow. And now his son, right, is here.
Now I'm here.
In North Carolina, of all places. How cool is that? And last night at the Truth Network, we had a dinner. Dr. Carson was there, and his wonderful wife, Danita, and my wife, Tammy, were there. And Mark, our manager in the Raleigh market, was sharing that literally he came to the Lord as a result of attending your church.
Yes.
And what God did for him there. And so he was just, which, by the way, he worked for a secular radio station back then, right?
That's right. Yeah, we had a gospel hour that our church sponsored, and then I would come before, and I would have a message, and I would see Mark at the station. We would always, very cordial, very nice, very friendly. I didn't know he wasn't saved. But God was working. God was working in his heart.
And what a changed life, right? As a result,
well, it's because of Mark that we got connected to the Truth Network. So how amazing that circle comes together. Here's a guy who is working at a secular country station where we sponsor the Gospel Hour, and he is hosting the Gospel Hour, but he doesn't know Christ. And then our messages come on, right after the Gospel Hour, and he's listening, and he's like, wow, this something is about this giving your heart to Jesus stuff, which is real. And he gets saved. And then later on, I come to find out, God radically changed him. He said, I have done this all my life, but I want to be somewhere where I can share the gospel. I want to live for Christ for the rest of my life. And then God connected the dots, and he is here with the Truth Network. And he came by. He said, I just want to let you know I'm working in a different place. I said, Truth Network? Said, yeah. I said, how can you get us on there? He said, I'll make it happen.
And he has?
And he did.
Yes, he did. Oh, my goodness, yes.
He really has in so many different ways. I bet I've worked maybe 8 or 9 NRBs with him since those events of that time. As I think about the whole, like you're talking about, it's all these little connections. And at the very beginning of the program this morning, and we've been talking about Chuck Swindoll, they showed a story of a man that was a veteran, and he was dying in the hospital. And they found out just, the night before he died, that he came to faith through listening to a broadcast by Chuck Swindoll, right?
Yep.
And you guys both have broadcasts. And for any broadcaster right then to think God would take whatever it is that you said in that particular moment and change the life.
Yes.
Like you did for Mark. It didn't have to be in the radio, but you just don't know how God's going to plant that seed.
That's right.
And then you get to see a changed life, but not just changed lives, generations and generations.
Absolutely. We see that all the time. People write in, talk to us, email us, telling us how our show, Clearview Today's show, and we're also, by the way, our messages are on the Truth Network on Sundays, how it's touching their lives. And it's not us, of course. It's the gospel. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. we're simply putting it out there, and God just takes that on the airwaves and touches lives. I mean, I had a young man come into our church several years ago who was in Tennessee. He was hearing us on the Truth Network, and he walks in and says, that's Pastor Shaw. I've been listening to him for a while. And he meets me in the lobby. He said, I've been listening to you on the radio. I said, really? He said, did you know I was here? No. So it's amazing what God does, things we do not even know, where that sound and those messages are going, but God is doing something.
Yeah, it really is. And so as you're listening to the Truth Network and you get a chance to connect with it, pray for us, I am always shocked at, you don't know how many prisoners, right? Because they have a little AM radio that are sitting in there, and they don't have a lot of hope, right? A lot of them are in a really tough situation, and they're at that place of the valley of humiliation where the soil's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
So true.
And here comes this word from the Truth Network, from, maybe it's a Date the Word, Scripture, right? Because the Word of God's pretty powerful stuff, just saying.
Pretty powerful.
And so how cool is that? So as you're praying for the Truth Network or giving to one of our programs, which all require, obviously some plumbing to keep them on the air and all that kind of thing. These are things that you are all partnering with us in the Truth Network. So for many of you, you're going to miss the second part of this. So go get the podcast. We're going to be back with Persecution Project. Thank you, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you,
Robbie.
Robbie.
Thank you, Dr. Date the Word. Coming up, John 3:16. Stay tuned.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today we are live from the convention floor of the National Religious Broadcasters Convention 2025. Just had an amazing time with Dr. Shaw and Dr. Date the Word Carson. And now, here in our booth, here on the convention floor, we have some old, dear friends of the Truth Network. You've heard about them many, many times. It's a Persecution Project. And, of course, God continues to do new, cool, amazing stuff through them, with them, as they continue to minister to those people in the Sudan. And I'm learning things even just like as I'm sitting here. For years, I heard about the Darfur. I never heard about the Dar 5 or the 6. Always the Darfur. I'm just kidding. The Darfur. But I did not realize that, because they were saying, man, I hope someday Stu gets to see the Nuba Mountains. And I was like, of course he did. I got pictures. Like, have you ever seen Stu's stunt double when he was we have to go, his brother-in-law was there wearing the exact same outfit in those pictures. He likes to say that's his stunt double. But nonetheless, the Nuba Mountains, he's never seen, but you guys got to be there in May. You filmed a new movie. It's so exciting what's going on. We got Matt, we got Ed Lyon, my old friends. So, Matt, what you got going?
Well, we are about to premiere a film that we just completed that talks about this portrays the heroism of the Christian community in Sudan, which is mostly found within the ethnic Nuba people. It's about 50 tribes. They come from a place called Southern Kordofan, or the Nuba Hills, or the Nuba Mountains. And they are the largest community of Christians. They contain the largest community of Christians in Sudan. So when you see a church in Sudan, 9 times out of 10 has been planted by a Nuba Christian.
Really?
Exactly. So this is a story of how when the recent war broke out, which was on April 15th, 2023, you had 2 Islamist generals in the military fighting it out, trying to control the government. And in the middle of them is this Christian community living in the capital city of Khartoum, and of course getting hit by everybody. And so there was an attempt to escape that area back to the Nuba Mountains, which is a safer area. And we had 2 individuals living in Khartoum One of them was a pastor by the name of Musa, which is Moses. And he had an assistant, a young evangelist named Emmanuel. So Moses and Emmanuel decided they weren't going to sit out the conflict and just wait for someone to save them, that they were going to be the saviors in that sense. And so they reached out to us to help them arrange buses. They were going to organize the evac. And so we were able to assist them, and they organized thousands of people, mostly women and children, inside the capital of Khartoum to get out to the safe zone in the Nuba. So they say these two men saved about 3,000 over the summer of 2023. And so a year later, we went and we shot a footage of them telling their story about what they did and why they got involved. And it's an inspirational story about what Christians can do when they decide, you know what, we're going to get active. We're not going to sit this one out. My community needs me, and I'm going to be the one that stands in the gap. I'm going to be the one that organizes the buses. I'm going to be the one that God works through to save his people. And that's what this short documentary is about. And it's beautifully shot in the Nuba Mountains. People will see areas of Sudan that most Westerners have never seen before in pictures. We've got great drone footage of the area, which is one of the few times that's ever happened.
Yeah, so we get to actually see the famous, you've heard about the Nuba Mountains. I know I've been hearing about the Nuba Mountains since maybe 2017. When did they really start coming after them?
2011.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that when I started hearing about
Yeah.
I'm getting old,
The
man.
Nuba have been persecuted for decades because they are, first of all, they're African, they're not Arabic, and so there's this racial divide in Sudan. And so they've always been targets of discrimination. But they also have a large Christian community. And Islam is very new in the Nuba area. It was mainly introduced in many places after 1956 when a Muslim Brotherhood dominated government took over the country and has been dominating the government ever since. And so the Nuba have become a sanctuary for people fleeing religious and ethnic persecution in Sudan. And just in the last 22 months, we've had over 1 million people fleeing from the conflict areas to make it to this area. So geographically, it's about the size of the state of Georgia. And they've carved out this like enclave, if you will, of freedom. And that's where people are going to. So
That's amazing.
In 2011, they were targeted by the Islamic government, and they resisted because, unlike many groups in Sudan that were being persecuted, the Nuba did not give up their guns. So there's a lesson there.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this picture.
Yeah.
There you are. It's in North Africa, right?
Yep.
They're led by somebody named Moses.
Yeah.
How in the world did you come up with a title for this?
Well,
Yeah.
It didn't take very long, did it?
Exodus, yeah. I'm so excited about this project, this film, because it highlights the passion of the Christians in Sudan, and the lengths that they're willing to go to save other Christians and to reach out to them in love and to offer salvation to those who aren't Christians at that point with the gospel message. This is a story about Moses, and Emmanuel. And last year I got to ride in a vehicle with Musa. And we were going to a pastor conference that had been set up and sponsored by Persecution Project. And he's riding next to me. And when we get there, he's just so full of life. And he's joyful. He's got life emanating from him. And he's helping us hand out all these audio Bibles to people. And just so excited. And I'm so excited just that people have an opportunity to see this film. NubaExodus.com if they want to go see it. And just to be encouraged by the belief and the faith of the Christians there in Sudan.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty easy to find. It's Nuba, which is N-U-B-A, Exodus.com of all things. So NubaExodus.com. And again, the title, Moshe, Moses, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get a chance here at the NRB to have a special viewing, right?
Right.
Tomorrow night in our suite.
Yes.
And Stu's been so, for those who may not know, Brad Phillips, very active with the Persecution Project, and Stu have been great friends for many years.
Right.
And Stu's on the board of Persecution Project. And so really, really an honor for all of us to have been praying for the Nuba Mountains and sowing into the ministry in a lot of different ways.
Some of our greatest supporters that we've had through the years have come from your listening audience.
Right.
They came through listening, hearing about this community they'd never heard of before, and then saying, you know what? God works in mysterious ways. He doesn't give you information just because he wants to, just because you need more trivia. He gives you information because he expects you to do something with it.
Yes.
And if it's just to pray for people who don't get a lot of prayers from outside that community, because most people have never heard of them. So if you can just dedicate some time to pray for the persecuted church in this little area of the world, it's maybe what God wants you to do.
It kind of changed your life. You didn't ever.
No, I never planned on doing this. No.
And it started how to.
One thing about as an organization is that we stay in one area. We don't hop around to other crises around the world like some very worthy and good organizations do. They respond to crisis kind of like a hurricane relief or something like that. We've stayed in one community essentially for more than 25 years. And so once you do that, you develop a relationship with the people there. So it really is a family relationship. So if your brother calls you up and says, hey, I just got a flat tire on I-65, can you come and help me? You don't say, well, my wife and I are going to pray about it and then we'll get back to you. No, you immediately jump in the car and you go and you help them.
Right.
And so that's kind of our response, because we didn't go to an area just to decide, hey, we're some white people are going to do some good in Africa. It's more like we saw some people in Africa doing some terrific work, and we want to buy into that love that is being already given to others. And what Ed said is true about Christians helping Christians, but they're also helping Muslims. What you find is that a lot of Nuba people left the Nuba Mountains 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and went to Khartoum, to the big city, to do what a lot of people do from little towns. They go to the big city to get jobs or have an educational opportunity or something like that, and they stay there. And over those years, many of these Nuba people were Islamized. But now they're back in the Nuba Mountains being discipled.
We got so much more coming your way from Persecution Project. Stay tuned. We're here live from the NRB. We'll be back with Ed and Matt. Stay on. We'll find out more about Exodus. NubaExodus.com.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and TruthNetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today we are live from the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, commonly referred to as NRB. 2025 this year. It is in Dallas, Texas. And so really, really cool to see some of the stuff that God is doing around the world. And I can just tell you, from sitting here today, I've interviewed amazing folks from Israel, amazing folks from Egypt, Persia, like Iran. But now I'm in North Africa talking about Exodus with a guy named Moses.
Exactly.
And NubaExodus.com, this movie that's going to be on tomorrow night, and those familiar with the Persecution Project, we've partnered with the Truth Network for years and years and years, become good friends in so many ways. Seeing what God has done, from my standpoint, I remember we got to get water in the Darfur. And Stu's in there, he's digging wells and, and all sorts of stuff. The next thing I know, man, we're in the Nuba Mountains and these people are fleeing. There's war. We got to help these people there,
Build a hospital.
We got to build a hospital. We got to, all sorts of different things. And then there's another war, and then they're shooting people and they're fleeing and this. And now you're telling me in 2023, more shenanigans.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Sudan has been independent of its colonial master since 1956, and and the Muslim Brotherhood, which people can look up, this is a very interesting history, have dominated the government in Sudan since that time. And so since that time, there's been very few years of peace in that country. There's been wars all over the place, and there is a current war now between the military government, which had overthrown the civilian government that was set up after the previous military dictatorship was overthrown. So it just goes back and back and back. In the middle of this is a Christian community that's growing like a weed. It's people are tired of the message that they've been hearing from the government and the military. They're tired of the fighting. They're tired of the hate. And the church in Sudan is reaching out to them with a gospel message of reconciliation, with love, with peace. And that's where people are finding their ability to cope with the trauma that this has all been for generations on their families. And so we're seeing tremendous growth in the church. We're seeing a lot of Muslims coming to Christ through the testimony of the indigenous church, which hardly existed 100 years ago, but now there are numbers in the millions. In among the Nuba community, it's more than 50%. It could be as much as 60% in some of the areas where we are, which went from zero to that in about 100 years' time. So you can see the gospel moving through Sudan, and it is just a privilege for us to be a part of this story in what little way we can. So we try to communicate the community there, the message of this community to the message to our Christian community here, because we think that people would appreciate it, and they'd see how we truly are one family, united in Christ. And there's ways that we can intercede for one another in not just prayer, but in action, in active what we call at Persecution Project, active compassion for the persecuted. So when people go to this film, NubaExodus.com, they can watch the film, but the film is tied to a campaign, because right now, Robbie, we have 50,000 that we're told are still trapped in the Khartoum area that need evacuation. So this covers a time period from 2023. So now there's still thousands of people, mostly Christians, from the Nuba community still trapped. So there's opportunities for us as windows open for us to get some of them out. And if people want to join with Moses, and they want to join with Emmanuel in continuing to help their community, they can do so. But in the meantime, watch the film and realize just what a privilege it is to be a part of this family of faith that we call the church.
You got Moses, but they call him
Musa.
Yeah.
You got Musa and Emmanuel, but they need buses.
Yeah.
Right? They need fuel, prayer fuel.
Yes.
They need all those kind of things.
That's right.
And so by going to NubaExodus.com, not only get to see the movie, and see these things in action, but God there can access your heart and see what you can take part of, being that fuel for that bus.
You can buy a ticket. You can buy a bus ticket. And that's what people did. That's how the initial 3,000 got out. They didn't have the money because all the banks were destroyed or shut down. So we had to get them the resources somehow, and it was us picking up the phone and calling our partners, many of them Truth Talk listeners, and we didn't send out a mail campaign or anything because it was secret at the time, very secret. So we just called up people on the phone, word of mouth, and the word got out, and we raised the money in a very short period of time. But, of course, the money would have done nothing if we didn't have Moses on the ground.
Yeah. And Emmanuel.
And they organized, they went house to house, literally, in the middle of a war zone, house to house, letting people know, if you want to get on a bus, the bus is here, you meet at this particular time in this location, and we'll get you out.
I was so encouraged by their courage. Emmanuel, I'm not going to give this away, he tells his personal testimony in the movie, but he knew it was dangerous. He had already left Khartoum, and Musa got in touch with him, and Emmanuel responded, "What do you want me to do?" And so Musa said, "Go back in and tell these Christians where to catch the buses." So he did. And then he eventually had to get on a bus himself, and he got stopped at one of the checkpoints and taken off, and they were frisking him, and a miracle happened. And I'm just going to leave it like that.
Is it in the movie?
Yeah, it's in the movie.
It's in the movie.
Yeah.
So,
and it's the movie, like, I know we get to see it tomorrow night, but if somebody goes to NubaExodus.com right now,
they can watch it.
They're going to see the Moshe shakedown?
Yeah, the Emmanuel shakedown.
Oh, the Emmanuel
shakedown. And he realizes, he said, yeah, I really understood the significance of my name after this little event that took place, because he should have been dead, and he wasn't. But, yeah, it was like one of these movies where the last man out is the leader, right? So, and that's what they did. These guys literally got on the last bus out, and so now they want to go back in. They themselves can't, but there are people inside that are wanting to come out. So we have an opportunity to get them out as well. So
cost about $200 a person,
right
now.
And what is that? I mean.
That's what it costs. That's what it's cost to get people the bus charters, the fuel.
There's charters. Like you're going to go into a war zone and you're going to go pull out.
It's amazing what the free market.
It's crazy.
Does. There's always somebody willing to do the job.
Yeah.
It is a miracle. But when you find them and there is a window.
There's a window.
There's a security window that opens and closes. And so when it opens, you got to run.
Yeah.
And then when it closes, you got to wait until it opens again.
I'll bet, finding that driver
And it's still not guaranteed. It's several day journey. It's fraught with danger. We've had recently there was a convoy. One of our convoys we got a group out, and they gave us testimony that one of the buses in their group was bombed by a drone.
Yeah. It wasn't one that we had sponsored.
It wasn't the one that it was another one that was in their convoy. And it was actually hit by a drone. So there's some. It's very, very dangerous right now. So people can pray for the safety of the Christians trying to get out. Again, most of these are women and children because men are afraid to get on these buses because if they're stopped, a lot of them will be pulled off and shot or forced into the army or accused of being a spy or whatever it is. So they typically load these buses with women and children and older men if men get on. So. Those are the people that we're trying to help primarily.
This journey used to take 5 or 6 hours, and now it takes up to a week or more to get there.
Yeah.
Well, what's the difference?
All the
security, the stops, and having to wait until the window opens, because the window opens and there's military checkpoints from both sides of the conflict that you have to go through in order to get to the Nuba, and that's a very, very difficult process as well. So. Lots of opportunities for prayer.
What a beautiful thing, when you think about God orchestrating all those windows. He orchestrated, obviously, Brad Phillips' heart, you guys' heart.
We're talking about it here.
Moses' heart, right? And now you listening.
Yes.
He is motivating us to go to NubaExodus.com, right?
That's right.
And see for yourself, what God is really doing and what part you might have in that, both, through praying for the windows, praying for the people, praying for the charter driver, for goodness sakes. I mean, that guy had the courage to say, I'm going to go help these people.
That's right. That's right.
Knowing that a drone took out one of your buddies, it's harrowing, and this stuff's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But people have an opportunity to engage on this. And that's the important thing is that, we watch these movies like Schindler's List, and you see how one person can make a difference in the lives of hundreds. When sometimes we're presented these opportunities to get involved in things that most people aren't aware of that's going on. And this is one of those opportunities. There's a community that needs help. You're hearing about it, and you can do something. Everyone can do something, even if it's just pray, meaning that's the most important thing, even if you pray. Yeah. Prayer is the thing that keeps. How do you think all this came together? It's God answering the prayers of people praying for deliverance from these fiery cities that are in a war zone. People praying and asking for deliverance, and all of a sudden they get a knock on the door, and this guy named Emmanuel says, "Hey, I got a bus for you." Okay, so
another neat thing about this movie is you get to see the heart of the people, not just Musa and Emmanuel, but we interview a whole bunch of people who were rescued during the evacuation, and you get to see Musa's joyful nature, and he's just fun-loving. He's a great guy.
You don't want to miss it, really. It's so easy. You just go to Nuba, NubaExodus.com. NubaExodus.com. Check it out. God's doing amazing things. We're going to be live from the NRB tomorrow as well. We're so grateful for you taking part of this, and we want to see you here tomorrow.